I love the caffeinated opening. Good morning. Welcome to Hobby Hotline, episode 254. I am joined by Dr. James Beckett and Victor, rookie card specialist. How is everybody doing today?
Good morning, everybody.
Do the salute right back. Morning to you guys. Um, we are kind of in national mode. I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of geeking out and excited and got a new pair of shoes, which is always the sign of getting serious about the national.
But are you bringing two pair of shoes?
I'm so embarrassed. I'm up to four.
Okay.
What?
Yeah, I'm going to be there for. I got like 6 days.
I think you're styling.
Yeah.
Well, there's no way I'm styling. First of all, it doesn't matter what you put on me; it won't be stylish. But I am driving, so I'm bringing a little extra for driving.
There you go.
Clean cheap shots. Good morning, Ruben. What's up? Good morning to you, sir. So, I mean, are you guys into a little bit of just kind of the logistical prep of getting ready for Chicago?
I know I am. I'm super excited about this one. I don't know what it is, but I'm just really excited about this national this year and looking forward to it, man. I'm ready. Let's go.
Danny, I've been too busy prepping to talk about prepping.
Well,
Still
I
digging
think
out from last year.
right, exactly. A couple of hellos. Philly Joe, good morning. Logan, good morning. Mad City Brew, good morning. So, hello to everybody who's tuning in. One of the things, and actually, Dr. Beckett, you kind of made me think about this on another show we did, just talking about getting ready to go to the national and sitting at the dollar boxes or whatever price boxes they may be. And I thought about it, and I'm putting a set together. I need to prepare. Am I bringing my set with me? Am I keeping it on a checklist? Am I just writing down what I need? And I thought, does everybody have to do a little personal card preparation for the national? Do you go in there totally blind? Do you go in there knowing what you have? Do you bring cards to trade or sell? And I just wonder, not just the logistics of the drive, the tickets, and all that stuff, but what do you do with your cards, if anything, to get ready? When you're going through the dollar boxes, do you have a goal in mind, a checklist, or are you just looking for something that you haven't seen before?
The latter for me. I have a lot of cards. The only reason I would know I don't have something is if I think it looks fresh and new. So if it's and even if I had it, if it was in a dollar box and I thought it was a $5 card, I might pick it up. So I'm more opportunistic. But one thing I haven't heard is that, because I am a little nervous about the Wi-Fi being a problem. And so, one of the things I don't regret saying this because I'm old school, but in the old days, people would bring like a list. But you don't have to have a written down list if you have if it's on your phone. You're still, even if you don't get Wi-Fi, you're still going to be able to look on your phone of something that you have on your phone, and that could be in your photos. If they're not in the cloud, if they're resident on your phone, some level of photos, that you could have a pictorial representation of the cards that you have. And then you'd see if it's not there, I don't have it. But I don't really buy. I'm not buying toward a list. I'm buying toward opportunistically what I don't see. But everybody should do it their own way. And my point is, they ought to have a backup for if Wi-Fi is poor. If it's poor, let's say, I hope it doesn't go out, but it frequently is not good.
Yeah, we should have done this before last year. Now you tell everybody. Victor,
This year in terms of the load, because there's going to be twice as many dealers there, and those are the big users, I think, and some heavy users or collectors and investors too. But the dealers are going to be always on, I think.
That's a good point. Victor, what do you do to get ready?
As far as the cards, I'm still gathering up. I still don't have like a final number of like actual how much money I'm going to have to spend on cards. So that's the first thing I'm tackling. But I'm really, this year, I feel like I'm a big set registry collector, and since the spike of 2021 and that, I really had to take a back seat on the set registry only because of the cost of a lot of those cards. So I want to like focus on my set registry stuff, but I'm also, taking that opportunistic angle, looking through value boxes, because that's something I just have a ton of fun with, and it's something that I use for resale arbitrage on eBay. So it's something I really enjoy doing, and that's kind of my angle at the moment. As far as getting ready, the PSA set registry, as far as cards that you need, is works beautifully. But I do have a backup on my phone, because a lot of time, like last year, the internet was just horrible. So I had to rely heavily on my list on my phone for cards that I need.
Logan says, "Me too, Victor."
Yep.
Mad City Brew. Hopefully, everyone has unlimited data plan. I certainly hope so, or you will be in trouble at the national.
That's just based on what it's going to cost you. You don't have any service, and you can have all the unlimited you want.
Well, your price per card goes up. One of the things that I love the idea of taking pictures. Is it old school to actually bring a small binder if you're doing a set and you have the set in the binder? Am I showing my age that I still like to do that?
No, you get aerobic points though. You get weightlifting points. You're going to be carrying it around. I did that one time. I wouldn't bring an album, but I brought my backpack was filled with trade material, and it was 15 pounds worth of stuff. Well, no one asked to look at it. Hey, what do you got in your backpack? No one asked. So I brought it back home with me. So it depends on what you want to do with it, Danny. I mean, it's great to see cards in person, but
for the dollar box, I have a lot farther to go on my set. So my checklist would be a couple hundred numbers. I'd kind of like having the binder with me and just,
Well,
I'm wondering if that makes me unique.
Oh, then you could slip it into the binder after you buy it.
Right. Just bring them in your trapper keeper. I know. I'm showing. I feel old with that. Here's a good tip. We'll take some local advice. If you have U.S. Cellular, it absolutely sucks in Chicago. Are they still the sponsor of the stadium? Which is ironic.
I don't know. They changed so much on that ballpark.
I know. I still call it the new Comiskey.
Yep.
Frank, good morning to you.
Hey, Frank.
We got a lot of people in here. Here's a comp the cards you're looking for before you go to the show. Well, I will say, if you're looking for specific cards, you should always know what market value is. What you're willing to pay may be different, but definitely having an idea of market value is something you don't want to ask the dealer for. Logan says, travel as light as possible at the National.
On the way there.
Yeah, that's might be one of the reasons I'm driving. Who knows? Dr. Beckett, I know you do the dollar boxes, and I know you look for rare stuff. How many cards roughly will you come out of by the end of Wednesday or Thursday, or are you waiting farther into the weekend?
I try to pull 100 cards an hour.
Okay.
If that's a good hour for me, and that's when I'm pulling cards. If I'm pulling 5 or 10 cards in an hour, then I'm in the wrong place. There's not enough nuggets in there. And I'm not trying to get all $5 or $10 cards. If there's a $2 or $3 card that I like, I'll pick that up too. But it's 100 cards an hour is if I rate the quality of the dollar box, it's based on how many cards I'm pulling per hour.
And this is a good point. The Singles Club adds new inventory every day, so it doesn't pay to wait there. Great point, Mike. Thank you.
That is so helpful to everybody else, Mike.
Yep. And just buy, really. Oh, no. I think somebody's seen pictures of me. And obviously, we're comfortable New Balance 1980 styled running sneakers to, from, and after the National. It is literally my entire wardrobe. Bo, if my SUV isn't completely filled with boxes of cards on my drive home Sunday, it will be a disappointment. Especially because you've got one of the shortest commutes.
I'm sure it will be full for Bo.
By the way, you can get about 200,000 cards in a Suburban.
There you go.
I haven't done the math. What's 100 an hour? What's 100 an hour? Does that come out to 200,000 at the end of the national?
No, like 4,000 if you had 40 hours.
Mike Summers again. I'm here to give Dr. Beckett. We can't keep all the secrets for ourselves. Yes,
but Mike, maybe you could have told that secret in 3 weeks.
That's a great post-national wrap-up story. We all have content for after the national. We need Mike to give us.
Well, the Singles Club is an unofficial sponsor of Hobby Hotline.
I have heard more about the Singles Club since I have been a part of Hobby Hotline in the last year plus than I have ever before. So I think I'm going to take some time over there. You guys were talking about rookie cards pre-show, and it was funny you talked about that, and it's not a coincidence with Victor on here and analyzing a lot of rookie cards, but really analyzing the players also. And Victor Wembanyama has his debut last night, and however you want to judge it, Connor Bedard's drafted. We're talking about expectations on these guys, and it happens all the time in every sport. But for the hobby, how well does a player really need to play to live up to the hobby's expectations? I mean, what does Wembanyama need to do to live up to the hobby's expectations?
If he's not as exceptional as they think, he's going to turn. He is Kristaps Porzingis, who's got some ball skills, some off-ball blocks, gets pushed around a little bit. We'll see. We'll see.
His card prices.
And last night, I think he did. So, that's we should want him to succeed. I do want him to succeed, but the level of hype is up there with LeBron, and he hasn't done it yet.
How many? I mean, my concern is how many LeBrons are there truly? And for people who are, I saw the superfractor of Wembanyama gets pulled and the prices that people are paying. I mean, it's almost impossible for me for those prices to stay throughout his career at some of these levels. And Victor, he certainly got more, rookie cards coming out. Your thoughts on the timing of those, how much basketball he's going to have played, and what he needs to do to match the hype.
Well, and that's where I think it's an unfair expectation to him personally. I just think the hype is so big that I don't know if he'll be able to meet it. It's just the expectations are so high, and he's going to be facing some pretty stiff competition, and I just think somebody needs to get that kid a cheeseburger.
Maybe two.
Yeah, but cheeseburgers don't fatten up your knees.
That's true.
Knee is where he's going to have problems. It's all the places where Porzingis had problems. He's playing on stilts.
Yeah,
on stilts. And we ball skills, but he can get bumped around.
Yeah, and we see that historically that with players that tall, right? There's typically a lot of, with the exception of Shaquille O'Neal, but when you look at him, right, he had the bulk, the muscle, the mass to really defend himself. And that's where I just think this kid, when he gets into the likes of, a Giannis and guys like that, I think he's going to be on the injured list pretty quick. And I hope not, right? I hope he does pan out and let's just ride the wave. But I think it's going to be a lot of what we see a trend in like baseball where the card market fluctuates on a day-by-day basis depending on their performance. And I think that's what we're going to see with Wembanyama.
We underestimate LeBron's and Michael Jordan's level of fitness and their ability to not just be on the court, but be on the court with strong in their own right and elevating their teammates. But LeBron was stronger and bigger than Michael Jordan, and the longevity is amazing.
Right.
Can Wembanyama have that? It remains to be seen.
Philly Joe says I'd wait at least 3 years to buy any of his rookie cards. Then parentheses, just get a war chest going now.
Yeah, but they'll either be too expensive or you won't want them.
Right. Well, then you'll have your war chest saved up,
for the next big thing.
Which Mike Summer points out over the last 5 years, and I'll say maybe even further back, how many of the hype prospects have actually panned out in all four sports? One or two, Otani, and who else? And if you remember Otani, when he had Tommy John, the whole market tanked on him. You could have gotten his stuff. I mean, pennies on the dollar compared to what his stuff is now.
Yeah, I think Judge has lived up to the hype too.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, the point of the question is way more losers than winners.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It almost took 63 homers for Judge for us to say, oh, yeah, by the way, he was good enough too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the real thing is, and a whole lot of Rex in the sports card shop. Give him a shout out here, and they have their new shop opening. So congratulations to the sports card shop in Rex. Hope you got us up on the big screen there.
Rex, we got to do a show. I'm about 20 minutes away from you. We got to do a show at your shop. Let me know how you feel about that.
We'll crash during the National. We'll just come in with a camera crew. It'll be like, one of those jump out from the bush, get them opening cards. Guys like Judge and Mahomes aren't hyped until they actually started performing. Well, that's an interesting one. The underhyped rookies, that break out. Did Judge come up with as much hype as Wemby or Bedard? No, he didn't. So that's a good thought. And at Rex, what's going on? All right, so nobody seems to really care about the rookie cards, so we're going to move on from there. Best practices for the hobby, and this is one Victor brought up. And I'm using best practices, but Victor used the term oversight and regulation. And I know we cringe at that. And the point was made, and we had a good chuckle. Everybody in the hobby seems to say they want, there to be some regulation, some oversight. And then Topps puts out some rules and regulations and oversight, and everybody in the hobby freaks out that there's oversight and regulation coming from Topps. So I guess the question is where do we stand? And Victor, I'm going to toss this to you. Your thoughts on both the hobby as a whole and what Topps did.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And I know a couple of weeks ago, Jeff Wilson put out a podcast, and it was Does the Hobby Need Regulation? And it was a very interesting topic with Jeff and Teapot. Very intellectually stimulating. Got my creative juices flowing on the topic at hand. But I do know at one point they did recommend a few people that who would be the one that would even spearhead such a thing. And I do know that one person they did mention was Dr. James Beckett, because they felt that it would have to be a person who is well respected within all genres of the hobby. But they also got into the overwhelming challenges that would become of a task like this. And there's some belief that, there's some things that we need to overcome before we can even think about hobby regulation. And when I say regulation, I think they did too. It's not so much government. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like a hobby coalition, basically creating a group of people that would give the voice a hobby, or give the hobby a voice, I should say. And so I just wanted to get Dr. Beckett's view on that. And how would he feel about running the hobby coalition?
Well, there have been attempts at that over the years, and they just haven't worked, Victor, because it's just hard to get people to buy into that. People 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 really want to self-regulate, and I self-regulate in the sense that I only want to buy from people that I either know or like or trust and have a relationship with. And if people do that, that's good. The problem is there's so many self-appointed experts, and not just that, they're outstanding marketers and promoters, and so they have a loud megaphone, a voice, and so they have a following. And if the following just blindly follow, if their following just blindly follows them, they could be led astray. And so I just think you have to self-regulate. There's no substitute for having your own knowledge. There's a lot of wisdom in having many counselors, of having advice coming from different directions. Uh, I just I think it's going to be hard, Victor. I've been asked to be involved for decades now, since the probably early 80s, so probably over 40 years. There have been attempts at that, and it's never really caught on, in spite of a lot of people being in favor of it. Fanatics is trying to do something. People would rather have it be bottom up than top down, but that's really hard.
Yeah. And I think there's this, right, there's this element of things that are illegal, things that are immoral, things that are unethical. Um, I think those are more common sense. Do we really need a coalition to tell us that trimming cards is wrong, or to tell us that shill bidding is wrong? We all kind of know about that already. But I think there's also an element of, personal preference. There's this thing where I think it falls more under our own personal conviction. Like for example, for me, like the breakers over at Backyard Breaks, it's not my style. It just, the tactics that they use really go against my personal conviction. So should we regulate backyard breaks? I don't think that's the answer at all. Now, the only thing is what Dr. Beckett said there was self-regulate, right? So I'm going to regulate myself where I'm not going to watch them, right? I'm going to go elsewhere. And I think that's kind of a good response. There's that self-regulating type of thing.
But how far till we hit a line? You know,
Well,
you know, a lot of people.
Is it illegal? Is it unethical? Is it immoral? So, I mean,
Well, Fanatics is about to launch their live platform, and they're borderline, dominance, whatever. They're stretching their tentacles. At what point is it not monopolistic from a government standpoint, but for a hobby, it becomes counterproductive? Do they need to buy a grading company for everybody to say that's a conflict of interest and that's too far? I mean, they're already, have the leagues own a certain percent. They're involved in gambling. They're involved in manufacturing. They're involved in sales. They're involved in distribution. I think when people look at the regulation, to Dr. Beckett's point, that's the bottom up that people want, regulated, because people don't trust the larger companies. Victor, when you say people are, know about shill bidding and trimming, nobody, are we accepting that? Or is it, is that just an accepted part of the hobby that we all live with that? Because not everybody's good enough to spot it or understand it. And should there be some sort of, oversight that helps look for that?
Yeah, it's hard, man, because some people might say, this behavior is wrong, this behavior is wrong, but this one, it's like, what's wrong with this one? How come? Why is this on the list? And to get agreement on issues that are of morality is an extremely difficult task when you're talking about the masses. It's just, I don't know, man.
Well,
I think. Go ahead.
No entity has more to lose or to gain than Fanatics. Okay, they're now the biggest player in the industry, and they don't want bad stuff happening and people being disgruntled. They want people being happy, spending more money, telling their friends. And so again, this is top down. They're going to try to exercise control over their vendors, or those they want to do business with, that do it their way. But their way, and here's the thing, they're going to get bigger. They're going to do more acquisitions. And all the things you mentioned, Danny, those from one angle, it's monopolistic. In another angle, they don't have any control over vintage cards, which is a huge percentage of the market. And there's always going to be, other ways to buy and sell cards except through Fanatics controlled entities. So going down the antitrust or anti-monopoly stuff is pretty unlikely, unless well, they don't own all the card shops. They don't own all the distributors. They produce they produce the most popular brands of cards right now, but not even all of those.
Yet.
Well, even then, if they did, I don't think that if they bought Panini and Upper Deck and leave, I think that would be.
So that would be the step too far.
Brian Gray is the tipping point.
Right. You're making this tough for me this morning, Dr. Beckett. Well, I'll leave that one untouched. Yes, no, Brian Gray is definitely the tipping point. But I would think that if they were to buy Panini, there's a lot of people that would say, fantastic. We get to keep all the brands and the names that, we've gotten to know and love. On the other hand, there'd be the other half of the hobby community that would say it's way too far. It's way too much. It's a total monopoly. We have no independence as card buyers anymore. And when you talk about Fanatics continuing to grow, which direction can they grow that's not going to cause, outrage? They just bought PWCC.
They can't,
yeah,
they can't win in that respect. But Hertz doesn't want Avis to go out of business. Coke doesn't want Pepsi to go out of business. So I don't think Fanatics wants Panini to go out of business, but they just want to be a very strong number one and grow their business. And
I'm sorry.
They're trying to do that.
Victor, do you think being involved in having ownership with the leagues and the gambling companies and investments and other things surrounding the hobby is any impact on their hobby business, or is it separate? And is that something that should be a watch?
That's concerning to me. To me, it's I don't know, like a conflict of interest. Just the whole gambling side, and the sports betting, done that kind of concerns me. But it's a little bit out of my wheelhouse to speak on it clearly.
Well, it's got a couple good mornings here from Alaska. Always need a shout out from Anchorage. So wherever you are, that's too hot right now. Think of Anchorage. John Mangini, we need to protect new collectors because people getting scammed left and right hurts the hobby. The hobby community suffers as a collective when people come into the hobby and then leave. Well, I guess the question is, who does that? Is that relationships in the hobby? Is that why it's so important to have friends in the hobby? Or is that up to somebody else to pass that message along?
I think it's a great point that he makes there, and I think it's. I'm trying to read the comment again because I wanted to touch on something. Yeah, but it comes down to, John, I think, is education, and I think the education, we assume that, at least I assume that everybody knows, that people know, but there's a lot of people that contact me through my DMs, that contact me through my website, that ask me the most basic questions. And it's like, wow, it just, you can tell by the verbiage that they're very novice to the hobby. And so I think, as content creators, we, especially veteran content creators, right? Us guys who have some years under our belt, I think taking on that mantle of becoming educators and really, teaching that, yeah, these are some boundaries. I say it all the time that we're so against rules, but when rules are done correctly, they actually develop boundaries, and they give us these boundaries that give us the best practices, right? But a lot of times we want to go outside of those boundaries, and we think that rules bind us, but rules really don't bind us, in my opinion. I think rules actually give us freedom to operate within those boundaries. And I think establishing a set of best practices um, to educate the next generation, I think there might be some validity to it. We just got to get the right people on board to spread it.
Victor, in a perfect world, you're right, but unfortunately, people don't pay attention to the rules until they get burned. And I don't want all this. I want spammers to be 1% or something, a very, very small. I mean, retail clothing places, they have shrinkage, they have pilferage, they have petty theft, and that's just a cost of doing business.
Mm.
And so in this industry, there's enough money. It'd be too easy if there weren't scammers out there. So there's scammers, and that's how you learn the rules. You learn the way,
the hard way, right?
You learn the rules after you get burned. You say, I don't want to do that again. Hey, we had those rules. Maybe I should pay attention to those.
That's true.
Because they're believing they're getting, but otherwise it'd be too easy. It is not a no-brainer hobby. We've found that out increasingly over the last couple of years. Everything doesn't keep going up forever. And if something seems like too good a deal, it might be too good of a deal. Then you pay attention to the rules when you've been burned.
Yeah.
And I think Rex makes a good point here, which kind of talks about learning a good lesson on your own and best practices. Breaking is really just gambling because you can literally get nothing for your money. Bounties and all the other add-ons really push the limits.
Yeah, Rex, the literally is the operative word there. You don't get nothing. It is gambling if you get something or nothing. But since you get something or something, you get either a not very good something or a pretty good something or a really good something. I guess there's some thought that that's not gambling. But if you really got nothing, if you had a box of 24 packs and 23 of them had a decoy only, and the 24th one had something that felt like a decoy but was this game used super duper valuable thing, that's gambling. But if you get 24 packs and each one of them has a card and each one is a little bit different value and one of them is worth more than all the others, that's what they're doing now. So you do get something for your money. You just don't get a good deal.
Well, if you're buying into a break, also pay attention to the rules of the break. Are they shipping all the cards? Are they shipping the base cards? You do want to make sure you end up with something.
In some breaks, you can end up with nothing. If nobody from your team, there are ways, and I think pretty much all the breakers that want to stay in business do some kind of a makeup thing, give them a free spot in the next one or something like that, because that's not good for business. Again, the dealers need to realize crime does not pay.
Right.
And if they do, you're going to say it's better for me to follow Victor's rules and to not get people burned because I'm going to lose business.
And I think, Victor, that speaks to the whole point of the oversight, and Dr. Beck, you said they've been trying to do this back since the early 80s. Do you mind me asking just to follow up on kind of like what forms, or is it trade associations, or
they're more like trade associations or associations of, and it was there's one of them tried to do it just with dealers, one of them tried to do it just with collectors, one of them tried to do it with both. Again, the Chris Sewell, collector, investor, dealer, in that order, almost everybody is in some order. They are a collector, they are a dealer, they are an investor. Maybe they're very little investment, very little dealing, but and they have conflicting priorities sometimes. So I'm not sure if I had complete power to set something up, whether I would do it just for collectors. In other words, like a buyer's collective. That would make sense, but it's really hard to gather a bunch of people to say, hey, we're gonna as a group, we're gonna try to get better terms and pricing, because as a group, we want access to these products. And if you don't give us access, we're gonna patronize some other product or some other company. And that's difficult to pull off because people people are renegades sometimes. It's, well, yeah, but I really want this product. So
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is so indicative into our culture today. There's just such a, such a, you're not going to tell me what to do type of attitude. And then you have, where who is this coalition? Who are you to say, who gave you the power? And you get into that whole, or you get into like people being like ultra sensitive about certain things and certain topics. And it's just the atmosphere and the culture of our world today. It's just, man, it sounds like a good idea in concept and in theory, but man, it's just an impossible task, I think. And it's not so much regulation, but it's, to me, it would be beneficial, but to pull it off is impossible, in my opinion.
Victor, it's generational.
Yeah.
Since I began, people want to do what's right in their own mind. They'll listen to the rules, but then they want to. There's an exception for them.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, but if you get burned by not following that rule, then you think, hey, maybe that it's like as a parent with a
Yeah.
child. You tell them not to do it, they do it, they get burned, they touch the stove or whatever. They, hey, maybe dad wasn't trying to keep me from having fun. He was keeping me from getting burned.
Burned, right.
And then they know, okay, but they had to get burned maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because some of the biggest, I guess, controversies we saw was PWCC. A couple of years ago when they left eBay. I mean, that was the biggest story in the hobby for a month. And look where they are now. They've been purchased by Fanatics. I think most people feel that they're under some different leadership and different people. I use them now. I did not a couple of years ago. And things change very quickly with some regulation because I think at the time people backed away from using them. The publicity had gotten so bad that I got to assume that all the changes were made because they were losing business.
But they had business. They had a lot of business. They had connections with a lot of big money people like to buy and sell. So they had something going there, and the regulation came from them being acquired. So now they're under new management, new ownership, and there'll be perhaps some stricter rules imposed. And when you're the boss, in the corporate culture of the company, you can fire people that break the rules. You can't fire a customer as easily or
Right.
that. So same thing with backyard breaks. I mean, they're talked about a lot. If we didn't talk about them, maybe but they're talked about because they have a shtick. But if they were acquired, or if they came under the Fanatics umbrella, and Fanatics said, if you're going to live break under us, here are the things you're going to do. That's regulation, whether they own them or they require them. That's
even if it's just to keep your clothes on.
Well, they can show their belly buttons.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to see their belly buttons.
We'll use the Dallas Cowboy cheerleader rules.
But let me say this, and I don't think, I think a lot of this is the way you look at it. I don't think that having a hobby coalition in order to establish a set of rules, oh my goodness, I said the rules R word, right? I don't think I would like a hobby coalition that would give the hobby a seat at the table with Fanatics in the PA. I would like a coalition that would have a voice in the direction of where the hobby's going. I just think up at the top, they're kind of disconnected to the collector's heart, and sometimes they do things, or sometimes they make mistakes, and there's no explanation of those mistakes. They just kind of like go on business as usual. I would love an outlet where they would communicate to the hobby like the way CGC did. I love what they've recently done. They've changed things, but they got out in front of it, and they were very transparent, and they went on live broadcast to answer customers' questions, and they got out in front of it instead of just doing whatever they want and then the whole situation implode within the hobby because everybody's got a ton of questions and nothing's getting answered. So I would love a hobby coalition that would be the voice for the hobby the in between to the big guys making all the decisions.
Yeah, but that already exists in the sense that you have some social media influencers and content creators that have uh, at least 5 and perhaps 6-figure followings. And when they speak, I think they should listen. When I was selling millions of magazines and I had an opinion, yeah, they wanted to know my opinion. But so that already exists, Victor, in the sense that there are hobby content creators and personalities that have a strong following.
Yeah,
Strong following.
yeah, I agree. And their
Couple,
voice has more weight than we think.
I think it has a lot more
Yeah.
weight. Yeah.
absolutely. I think the hobby's doing a decent job of policing itself right now. Am I nuts? I think that's a great question. I want to follow it up with, is trimming wrong if a person trims for their own personal collection because it looks better with no intent to sell?
Mm.
So I'm going to put those two together because that's the hobby self-policing and then self-trimming as well. If you're truly never selling a card, you can draw a mustache on the player. There's no rules. The idea of trimming a card is if you're taking advantage of somebody, for financial gain, is the way I look at it. I don't know how you guys feel, and that's self-regulating.
This problem goes away if every grading company was perfect at detecting trimming.
In my example, you wouldn't get it graded.
And they're not. No, you would get it graded and it would come back trimmed. But I'm saying the fact that occasionally, I think it's rarer than people think, but it's out there. If trimming is always detected by the card companies, people wouldn't do it if they had any thought. I mean, they could take it. Trimming reduces the value of the card if it's caught, drastically reduces. It increases the value of the card if it's not caught.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it needs to be caught. And I'm hopeful that new technologies and new awareness. That's why the Evan Mathis video was a good thing. Every grader should watch that and say, now I know some additional things to look for.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think to his question, I just think, for your own PC, they're your cards, right? You do whatever you want to them. But my concern is that now when those cards get passed on, say you leave your collection to your family or whatever, and they go to resell those cards. So I don't know, to me, yeah, go ahead and trim them. They're your cards, but you should disclose that somewhere. I don't know.
Well, here's the problem with that, because I've been involved with a bunch of these over the years, is that when somebody, when a collector dies, and let's say he, because it's usually the dude. Okay, the dude dies. He was the collector, and the wife is sitting there with a bunch of cards.
Right.
If they're graded, no problem, easy to get comps. If they're not graded, then I've seen auction houses and collectors that buy collections take advantage of widows by claiming that I have to make a lowball offer for you because it's possible these cards were trimmed that are raw. And in reality, it's very unlikely. Okay, but the widow doesn't know. Or I see you've got these signed rookie cards. Well, I just don't know if that's I can't really pay for that because they're not authenticated. Okay, but if it's a veteran collector, it's very unlikely that they are
Fake.
not going to pass authentication. But they haven't yet. And so again, I would just like to make it easy for people to know that any of these card graders are going to be able to determine if something is trimmed or not. And so widows or anybody will know that it's easy to tell. It's easy to tell.
You should also assign a friend to deal with your collection. And that should be in writing and part of your regular will. And if I sound too old and if you don't have a will yet, get one and assign a card friend, because you don't know what the market's going to look like, and if you think you're smart enough to make all the decisions now and know everything, then you're really going to leave the problem to somebody else.
Yeah.
Victor, do you have a card friend? I'll be your card friend if you want.
I do not. I might take you up on that.
All right. I'm always looking to acquire more. So somebody made the comment that trimming is rare in this industry, and I wanted to answer that or throw that to you guys in two ways. One, I'm sure on a percentage basis of all cards out there, it's a small percentage, without a doubt. But trimming is not done for base cards that nobody cares about. Trimming is done where there's an advantageous scenario to take advantage of somebody. So what percentage of vintage graded cards, because that's where everybody always assumes all the trimming has taken place. I mean, are we at 1%, 3%? Dr. Becky, would you even put a guess on how many over the years have gotten through as trimmed or stayed raw as trimmed?
Well, even one getting through is upsetting to me. But what
Yeah.
what I try to bring up with the BGS, my friends there, I'm not in charge anymore, but my brain still works. I throw out some ideas, and one of the ideas I put forth, and this really, I don't mind if all the grading companies look at it this way, but when a card comes in the front door to the grading company, it just immediately you can know, is there any chance this was trimmed? Or is there zero chance it was trimmed? If it's a 1989, almost anything that's a common card or a semi-star, it's so unlikely that'd be trimmed. But if it's a Ken Griffey Jr., Upper Deck 89, it's been micro shaved on one end to make it perfectly centered. And so that's almost, again, almost imperceptible. It's only off by a millimeter. I want that to be caught, okay? But there is a chance of any well-centered vintage card. You've got to check the edges, and I know they're doing that, but they've got to check them. And now with Evan Mathis is pointing out how they can kind of disguise the edge cut, the new edge cut, by waxing it. And so again, you've got to look for that then. And I used to feel them. I'd go around the corner, I could feel it. And if one edge felt different from the others, it's rare that a card is trimmed on all four sides. I believe that's extremely rare. It's usually trimmed on one side, possibly two sides. The other thing I would check, again, this is for all the grading companies, is 90-degree angles. I don't know how many people took trigonometry. I don't think it's even in the school anymore, but it's a study of angles and things. And if it's a 91-degree corner or an 89-degree corner, that's a red flag to me, because cards are cut in perfect rectangles. And so, I just want, when they all get caught, people will stop doing it, and not until.
Is one of the challenges the quality of printing presses from back in the 50s and 60s, that they're forcing the grading companies to have some sort of tolerance in size?
In most cases, no. I think regardless of the technology, they all came out rectangles. I mean, they weren't. The diamond cut is like a shimmy on the sheet or something. I think they're generally coming out in rectangles. They could be out of register. They could be off-centered in that whole sheet being cut that way. But again, I just think the grading companies, for the most part, are catching them. A lot of what has been pointed out is possibly trimmed vintage cards from, we're talking about 30 years of grading. And so you've got tens of millions of cards being graded, and I won't say a handful. Are there thousands of trimmed cards that have gotten through out of tens of millions? Yes. And a lot of that's in the past, and I hope the the grading companies get better and better at detecting it.
When grading was starting, how much of this was on the radar compared to just the quality of the card versus others, Dr. Beckett?
It was always there. I mean, before we even got started, we were talking, and a lot of the guys our guys that started this were veteran hobbyists, and they'd worked in card shops, they'd worked for me, they'd done a bunch of different things. And basically, when you just see a card that walks into your card shop, if you're a dealer, if it looks too good to be true, they're just certain vintage cards. If somebody, especially if they walk in with one card, that's a red flag. If they walk in with a whole, has anybody ever walked in with a near set of 52 tops? If they're not in penny sleeves, just put them on the counter and stack them up, and you can see if one of them is even slightly perceptively shorter, and then stack them on the end. Okay. The problem is, this is not always, it's very rare, but 55 Bowman are an exception to that. If you stack them up, you will see some size differences there. And they're not generally within series as much as they are the first, second, and third series were different situations. But if it looks too good to be true, if it's only one card, a red flag. If it's a whole bunch of cards, you have the comparison to the others. And if they're all trimmed, they're not all deceptively trimmed. Many of the cards that came across my path in the 70s when I was buying collections, if they were trimmed, they weren't deceptively trimmed. They were somebody saying, hey, 52 tops are big, 52 Bowmans are just right. I'm going to make my 52 tops into 52 Bowman size. I'm going to cut off all this stuff. And I actually found some cards like that more than once, a couple times. So that's stupid now, but yeah, it's a pox on our hobby, and we need to eradicate it.
This is an interesting question. Did Becky keep any records on percentages of trim cards or altered cards or anything like that would or would not have been public?
I would say probably no, because I don't think it's something that could be scraped. I'm not sure. The only way you could accumulate that is you could, again, if I had access to the data, which I actually don't now, but if I did, you'd know over the months, like Ryan Stasinski does. He just looks at the pop report, but the companies know how many cards are submitted and how many cards make it into the pop report.
Right.
And I'm not sure the authentics or the rejected cards go into the pop report. Maybe authentics do, but if it's trimmed and it doesn't get slabbed, I think it's just sent back. So there'd be a way at that, but I don't think it'd be easy, especially historically. I think it's a small percentage, Danny. I don't think it's a big percentage.
Victor, do you have any concerns, or is it, other than the Evan Mathis video, is this not on your radar?
Yeah, it actually, I had made a video on that video, but I just think I have a lot of hesitation when it comes to high-end vintage, only because them cards were, so mistreated for so long, as far as rubber bands thrown in boxes, and when you see high-end vintage, it always makes me, well, let me take a closer look here, so it triggers a red flag for me. But yeah, it's another one of those issues that, man, we've got to, I guess, depend on the technology to really catch that. I don't think the human eye can catch it, to be honest with you, but there's ways, I'm sure. And you do see cards get sent back altered, right? And so hope for the best.
Yeah.
Well, again, I believe there's going to be more and more AI and computer assisted grading, tag, that's all they're doing. And so I think if they're getting good at they'll socially promote if this would be a big victory for them if they've the ability to really catch the trimmers. Okay, but every grading company is dealing with this. It's bad for your reputation, and if things get through, then they send more to those same grading companies, and until you catch it. So my hope is that the cooperation, Victor, among dealers, among collectors, among grading companies. I wish they'd all put their heads together meet once a year and talk about how to catch the bad guys. It's bad for all of them if one of them messes up.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we got a couple minutes left. Logan says, I collect NASCAR. Luckily, I don't have to be too concerned about looking for trimming.
That's not true. If NASCAR was more popular, there's a lot of trimming, Logan. If everybody that went to a race collected cards, the NASCAR, all they need is for NASCAR enthusiasts to collect cards, which was the attempt back in '88 with Max, I think. If that really had happened, there'd be trimmers galore.
NASCAR radio says, ouch. Yeah. So maybe that's our new standard of you've made it as a sport when people start trimming your cards.
Well, when people are scamming, I mean, it's a dynamic industry where the bad guys want to get in on it, and the equilibrium is keeping them in check. You can't it's whack-a-mole. You can't completely eliminate them, but but if there's good communication among the good guys, then we can keep it in check. Otherwise, it's no fun to get burned.
No. And if you want to learn more about this, there's been plenty of things in the history of the hobby that you can find on YouTube or other places that'll tell stories of everything from Operation Bullpen to individual scammers and things over the years that have happened. And just educate yourself. You don't have to necessarily buy trim cards to learn the lesson. You can certainly educate yourself.
Danny, it reminds me of most of the hobby content creators that we're talking about, and not necessarily in a bad light, but that can take abuses. They're almost always offense. They're always, you should buy this, you should buy that, go for it, all that stuff. And really, the content creators I like to listen to have a balance between offense and defense. The defense is, how do you protect yourself? How do you not buy something? How do you just say no? How do you have deferred gratification? Because that's the secret of a long, sustainable hobby, that you're really enjoying yourself. And this go for it. That's not balanced to me, because things are not always going to be going up, and it's not always the right decision to pull the trigger and go for it.
I also think, and not to be corny, one of the great things about this hobby is people will answer questions. I've never talked to somebody in the hobby, and asked a question on a card or, a set or just something in general where I haven't had a good conversation and pretty much gotten a nice answer back. So don't be afraid to talk to people and your friends. And, if you're going to the national, talk to people and learn as much as you can. Like Dr. Beckett said, the more educated you are about stuff, the better decisions and the better regulating.
Can I give one quick comment to Chris C?
Please.
He said, SCR, Sports Card Radio, are hypocrites. They're proud of being hypocrites.
Yes.
The etymology of the word hypocrite is somebody that wears a mask, of not being yourself. Those twins, those brothers, have created personas that are enough people are interested to hear some of the outrageous stuff. They delight in being hypocrites, and they would celebrate that and tune in to find out their latest hypocritical comment that they want to make. But through that, there is some good stuff in there, packaged with a lot of hot sauce or whatever they're putting in there. This hobby, we don't need to eliminate people. You just need to figure out, like Victor said, figure out who you want to follow, who you want to listen to. Mm-hmm. It's a free world, but don't just follow the herd.
Yeah, I typically, my thing, I'm big on education, but through that, I also say, be careful who you listen to. Now, there's the thing, I need to be able to decipher or discern what is legit and what is BS. Okay, we got to use some good judgment there, and I can listen to SCR, and there's some things that I don't agree with, and there's some things that I can use and put in my knowledge arsenal. Same with any other content creator. And there's, we got to learn how to navigate through the sea of content that's out there, because not everything is spot on.
And if you listen to a whole bunch of different voices, you're going to develop some discernment.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with hearing something and then going to do more research on it. Be proactive in your education. Don't just don't listen to people and assume it's true. And that's on anything in life, not just cards. Guys, we are at the 1 hour mark. Any last words as we prepare for the National and get ready to see friends actually in person?
Let's go. Let's do it.
There we go.
Must be present to win.
Right, exactly.
I'm on record as saying I think this is going to be the biggest and best National ever.
There you go. The Joe Namath of the National, Dr. Beckett. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. And if I remember to hit the outro this week, we'll actually go home. So appreciate everybody joining us for Bench Clear every Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, and first Tuesday of the month, Hobby Hotline on YouTube. Thank you very much. Take care, guys.